The white man has taken voodoo, the same voodoo that he made you scared of. He has taken it and he's using it on you every single day. You just don't know about it. You just don't understand it. You don't get it. So you think, oh, he made you think voodoo is demonic. Voodoo is satanic. So then you don't use it. Or when you use it as a hobby. You don't use it to liberate yourself because you don't believe in it to that extent. The white man has big weapons of mass destruction, you think. He has big weapons, big military power. What you don't know is that voodoo, when the French had the big military power that you see today, voodoo exterminated them out of Haiti. How did they do that? The white men still don't know. He knows it was voodoo, but how, he doesn't know. Because he doesn't have all the knowledge. He has some of the knowledge, but not all of the knowledge. If he had all the knowledge, he would have set you free. It's because he knows he doesn't have all the knowledge. He can't set you free because he knows if you have access to it one day, you'll destroy his civilization overnight. So he has to continuously make you think that you are a little person, that you are, and he uses all the means to play in your mind. He makes you think you're inferior because you're black, and you believe in it because the minute you believe in it, you've handed him your energy. That's what it's all about. The minute you believe it, he's got you. Because you don't know who you are. But because you don't know who you are, everything that they say or do frazzles you. And every time you frazzles, it's like the cash machine. Cha-ching with energy. Cha-ching with energy. That's what's going on. And they make you think, all this illusion they put out there for you to distract you so you never know the real truth. You know, you go to church, you think it's all about, we just venerating God and, we do that on Sundays and it's, oh, how the world is such a wonderful place and peaceful when God this, when God that. But when you look at reality, you notice everything that they told you, none of it is really panning out. Not really. Not at all, actually. And if you really look deeply, you realize everything that they told you that was bad is actually what's good. So your best bet is to actually get back into what they told you was demonic and start looking into it and start asking more questions about it. I mean, why would somebody who tells you that your ancestors were demonic and satanic? And by the way, when they're talking about ancestors, we black people don't understand the full meaning of the word ancestors. Your ancestors or your lineage, your royal lineage. These people knew who we are, and they knew without a plan, well calculated, this was not going to happen. First, they had to make you think, here you are, royal. Your lineage is royal. They got you from being royal to slaves. How do you do that? You can't do that overnight. You don't just do that just like that. You need a plan to do that. You need a big plan. And they had one. First, by demonizing everything about you. Everything that you are, from the way you speak to the way you dress, to what you ate, your gods that you venerated, how you dance. Everything about you was demonized. Because they know once they can do that, guess what? The rest is easy. You're going to do that yourself. For yourself. You're going to do it to yourself. And then you're going to do it to your children. And your children is going to do it to their children. And that's going to go on for 1,000 years. So your ancestors are your lineage. But it comes all the way up to your parents, your grandparents. Can you imagine your grandparents, your parents raised you. They gave you life. They gave you everything you needed. They took care of you. They protected you. And someone else come and make you think that you shouldn't venerate them as a people. You shouldn't venerate their memories, all the way, everything about them that you shouldn't venerate, that you shouldn't pour libation for them, that instead you should go to the church and do a mass. But in you, you shouldn't venerate them because that's a sin, because they are dead. That's what religion says. They are dead. You don't venerate that. But you see them venerating their own ancestors, right? When you celebrate 4th of July, when you celebrate all of these other holidays, what are you venerating? When you go in their churches, their saints, what are you venerating? That is their ancestors. They're not your ancestors. You're venerating their ancestors, their egregore. You're giving your energy to their egregore. You're making their egregore powerful. You as a god with the energy of the universe, of the cosmos, the stars. That's what's in you. That's who you are. You are a dust from the stars. So you are God. You use that energy to an egregore, a group of people from another planet who needs your energy. That's how we become their slaves. And we will continue to be their slaves as long as we don't know how to maintain our energy. What's the importance of our energy? What kind of veil do they put in front of our eyes that we cannot see? Because that's what it is. They put a veil, and through the veil, you can't see. I don't care how bright you are and how spiritual you are, unless you realize you are not in your own matrix. They just reroute it. They have many back doors. They don't only have one back door. They have many back doors. If you get out of this door, they got another door for you that you go through. You said, oh, I'm out. No, you're not out. You're back in the same matrix because they have many doors. Voodoo and the system of voodoo is what can liberate us, is what can keep you in a different system. You stay in that, then they can't pull you. They can't make you a slave. They can't read your mind. They can't give you orders for a no-frill life. This is what they offer us, a no-frill life, a no-frill existence. That's what this is. Everything you see right now that makes it look like it's glitter and gold and it's beautiful, it's a no-frill existence comparatively to who our ancestors were. It's a no-frill existence. Who are you spiritually? If you just look at the burial ceremony of an Egyptian pharaoh, go look at that. Go search that on YouTube. The burial ceremony for a pharaoh, and then compare that with whatever you see happening in the world today, and you tell me. These people were living not just for now, they were living for millennials, because your life is not supposed to be just this little glimpse here, but everything that you do here is going to determine whether you live for millennials or just for now. Not because there is a hell waiting for you. We don't believe in that. But if all your energy went somewhere else, then you don't have anything. You don't have anything now, and you don't have anything later on either. Because as you live, your energy, as you live, what you do with it, what you put it towards, that's going to be your legacy. If you're listening to this, if you're 50 years old, you'll notice that when you were 20, you thought of life one way. Now that you're 50, you start thinking about, oh, what's going to be my legacy? What's going to be my heritage? But still, you're thinking about it more in terms of this world. But if you look back, you'll see what you did for the last 30 years is what's going to dictate what your legacy will be. Well, these people that I'm talking about from Kemet, the way they lived, every action that they took, they thought about that, what their legacy will be. And that legacy, all they thought about was their spiritual lives. What was that going to promise in the end? Of course, while they were doing that, they had all the accolades of materialism. They still had that, but it wasn't the primary thing, because that would have been a fallacy. And that's what they have us do now, venerating a false god. And most of us are willing to give our energy away for nothing, for material things that in the next, I'd say 50 years is going to have no meaning. Absolutely none. I don't care how much money you have. It will have no meaning if you can't maintain your energy, if your offspring cannot maintain their energy for millennia, for thousands of years, not just a couple generations, but for thousands of years. So I spoke about that before in videos about Deontay Wilder, but to me, it's the most clear case of how religious intimidations can play mind games on us on an everyday basis. But you see it clearly in the case of Deontay Wilder with Tyson Fury. Religious intimidation, artificial intelligence, it's real. All of this you see going on in the world to create a lot of fear. There's a reason for that. The more fear, the more unstable people are, the more energy they give off, and the more energy they can take with them. And if you understand or have any inclination of what Vodou is as a spiritual system, there is no way they would have been able to monetize Vodou. You can't monetize it. For one, there is no hierarchy in Vodou, first of all. So there is no priest, there is no Vatican, there is no Pope. Even a 2-year-old can tell you in the village, you're doing this wrong, or this is what you should be doing. If we having a Vodou ceremony and a 2-year-old is invoked by the laws, the 2-year-old will tell you, the laws will talk to this through this 2-year-old or through this 5-year-old and tell the whole village of 90-something years old, this is what you should do, or this is what you're doing wrong. Take this herb and do this with it. This herb is the antidote to that. Or we have this sickness, this herb is to heal. This 5-year-old can say it. And no one is going to look at that 5-year-old and saying that he's not intelligent enough, he's too young, or anything like that. That's the kind of system Vodou is. It doesn't discriminate, because we are all gods. In a system like that, you could see how everyone respects everyone else, including the female. There is no hierarchy in Vodou, male and female, that the male is more, a male practitioner is more knowledgeable versus a female practitioner. There's no such thing. So you could see how Vodou was a threat to the whole entire world. Because this world, this patriarchal world, had a plan for us. And you can see the plan now. Hopefully by now you see what it was. And this small little group of people who was controlling the entire world, when Dessalines, our emperor back in 1804, beat the French army, and we declared our independence, that was a threat to the whole world. Not just economically, but spiritually that was a threat, because they weren't going to be able to take the entire world and make them slaves. Not if we had anything to do with it. Not if we were allowed to build our civilization after that. But the plan is they just delayed it. It's just a delayed plan. But it's still en route. The only thing that can save this world is Vodou, to which human beings can be human again, can venerate the gods of the cosmos, can be human, can practice spirituality, can be one with nature, can venerate nature. Not because we're going to recycle one plastic bottle. No, we won't make plastic bottles anymore, so we don't have to recycle them. That would be the intelligent thing to do. In Vodou, we have intelligent decisions that we make. We drank out of something that came out of a plant that's called calabash. We eat in calabash. We eat in leaves. We've been doing this for a long time. That's why we were a threat. Vodou would not allow for us to poison the waters with toxic waste and then turn around and said, oh, we have a movement. We're going to clean up the waters. That's an insane way of thinking. That's why Vodou was demonized. It would not allow the world to make you a slave. But Vodou, besides being demonized, the enemy played a very crafty game with us. First, he demonized our spirituality. He demonized who we were, all the way to everything, like I said, from how we laugh, how we talk, how we dress, how we eat, what we eat, how we give birth to, everything. And then he gave us a false God, a false system for us to exist in. Through it, because we are the geniuses that we are, my ancestors, the geniuses that they were, they turned it around because they would not give up to what they knew in the beginning. So when Christianity gave us their religion, the Africans took the Christianity, the saints, all the rituals that the Christians do. They would act as if they were doing those rituals. But in their mind, they said to themselves, I am invoking my laws. I am invoking my African gods, because it's in them that I believe. But they act that they were doing it to the Christians' rituals because they had to, because they couldn't outright practice their own spirituality. So over time, generations being born into this, what happened, there's a mixture in our voodoo of Christianity and our own African spirituality. So there's a mixture in there. That mixture obviously has posed a problem, obviously, because some of it's not ours. We've made it ours through the trauma that we were put through, to the atrocities, to the evil that we've endured. We put something else together to help us, to save us. And it's because in our reunion that we did, finally, after 300 years of slavery, we're doing this mixture of Christians and voodoo together, because we can't do our own thing freely. But it's because in the end, after 300 years of slavery, our voodoo priest in our ceremony that was to give us liberty, in that ceremony, he said, we have served the white God for 300 years, but we realize the white God wants our blood. That's all he wants. He loves to see us cry. He loves to see tears in our eyes. We will not continue to serve him. We want our liberty. And to have our liberty, we're going to denounce him, that God that they gave us, and we will invoke our gods, our African gods. And it's that prayer that gave us our liberty. So there's something to be said about that prayer that Bookman Duty said, because it was after he invoked that prayer that we were able to free ourselves. There's something to be said about that. I'm going to believe wholeheartedly, 300,000% that it was because they denounced the false God that they were able to liberate themselves. But you'll hear other people say otherwise. Of course, after we liberated ourselves, the enemy came right in real quickly and inject himself into our society, into our minds, and told us that, no, what you did was demonic. Can you imagine? Freeing ourselves, they made us think, was demonic. Freeing ourselves. We weren't supposed to do that. And some of us, unfortunately, sadly to say, some of us believe that yes, maybe if we had stayed slaves for another 1,000 years, then God would have eventually free us. Some of us Haitians, unfortunately, think like that. But no, what happened was, after that, we went back to serving that very same God that had enslaved us. And here we are back in slavery. To me, that makes more sense than anything else. You see? So the Christianity that is in voodoo is indirectly what's causing some voodoo practitioners to misunderstand voodoo spirituality as a system. Because Christianity, with its concepts of Satan, with its concept of evil, with its concept of God, the false God in the sky, all of those things, if you have that in your mind as conceptions, it's going to be difficult for you to do metaphysics. It's going to be difficult for you to understand astrology. Even if you say you renounce them, you don't do them. But if they hear, this is what's going to be working in your brain with your chi, with the frequencies, with everything else. That's what's going to be working, because it has to go through you. It has to go through this brain. It has to go through this mind. And if this mind, whatever this mind holds as truth, that's what's going to come out. Remember, the spirits, they are spirits. But in order for it to go through you, it has to go through this matter. This matter, how is it prepared? How refined is it? What's in it? What are you keeping in it every day that you are giving power to? If it's any of those things, that's what's going to come out. If what comes through you, it's too dense. It's too dense because you have parts of yourself that's been so traumatized. That's what's going to come out. A lot of time when you hear people talk about a voodoo, the bad parts of voodoo, the bad parts of voodoo is the people who misunderstand voodoo. And let's not forget, slavery had traumatized us so bad. Plus you add poverty, violence, and what they turn our country into. They divided us so much. Religion has divided us to begin with. But plus poverty, plus violence. Then you add artificial intelligence to that, religious intimidation. You start forcing people to venerate a false god, whether you do it because you give them $5. That's what the missionaries do when they go to Haiti. They give people food because they know this is quote unquote a poor country. We're not a poor country, but that's what they tell you. But they make these people to think they're poor through their programming, through their brainwashing. People feel they're so poor. And when they see these people coming, and you have to understand, this is their God, because, these are white missionaries coming in. So when they see a white missionary, it's not just a white missionary. This is a God in front of them. If you really understand the psychology of trauma, this is a God that's now come, and the God comes to save you. And the savior in this instance is, I'm giving you food, and you need food. And these people really need food because they put their country in a state where they need food. So now I'm giving you the food. I am your God. I am your savior. So that same person now, when they're practicing their voodoo, that same person is practicing their own spirituality, because no matter how poor they are, they're trying to stay within themselves, within their truths, which is what their mothers, their grandmothers taught them. But when they are practicing it, what's coming out? What's in here? They've reduced them. They have reduced them as human beings. They've reduced them to think like a slave. Well, it is that slave now that is practicing their African spirituality, that is invoking the gods. It's with that mindset. So who's doing voodoo? Voodoo is knowledge. Voodoo is intelligence. They'll like to make you think voodoo is something dirty, is something inferior. Voodoo is knowledge, ultimate knowledge, knowledge of self, knowledge of the cosmos, knowledge of nature, knowledge of everything around you. A voodoo priest cannot be an ignorant person. It's just impossible. The two don't go together. When I was growing up in Haiti, a voodoo priest is somebody in the community that had knowledge to everything, from the child who's sick, what's the medicine, the herbal medicine they were going to put together to treat the child. Same thing for the woman who's giving birth. Same thing for the older person who has arthritis. Same thing for two people who has some sort of disagreement between them. He was the psychologist. He was the psychiatrist. He was the medical doctor. Okay? He was everything, because that's what voodoo is. You have knowledge. You have knowledge of everything. You don't have to go to school to get knowledge. No, because your first school is life. Your first school is the universe. I know she's my people. I hear her accent. Yes, yeah, you will hear my accent, especially when I'm a little emotional. Absolutely. So you see, my people, I talk about in my platform, I'm trying to get my people, my Black people, if to come together to liberate ourselves. We will never be able to liberate ourselves outside of our system of Vodou, which has all intelligence, all knowledge of self. Like I said, knowledge of the cosmos. It did that before. It liberated us before, and it can do it again. But we all have to be within that system, because it's in that system that we can understand each other. First of all, it's that system. It's the only system that can rally all of us together under one umbrella, because we stand for one thing. And the enemy knew that. That is why the enemy demonized Vodou, because that way we'll never be able to come together. I feel bad when I talk to some of my Haitian brothers in system, and religion is the very first thing that divides us. They find out that I'm a Vodou practitioner, a Vodou believer, and I don't understand how Haitians can think I can be Haitian and not be a Vodou practitioner or Vodou believer. For I understand all Haitians are Vodou practitioners and Vodou believers, whether they know it or not. Because Vodou is the very fiber of who we are. Vodou left the shores of Africa with us when we were kidnapped. Vodou got on those boats, and Vodou came with us. Vodou went to Jamaica with us. Vodou went to Haiti with us. Vodou went to Barbados with us. Vodou went to Martinique with us. Vodou went to Brazil with us. Vodou went to Cuba with us. Vodou went everywhere with us. Vodou sustained us until we were liberated. It's not just the people we're talking about. We're talking about a heritage. Vodou itself, as a system of the universe, of the cosmos, will not disappear. I may disappear, but Vodou will not disappear. And since Vodou is in me, when I practice it, when I keep my energy, when I maintain my energy, I am the legacy of Vodou. And that is what the world wants to trash. And the way they're able to do that, we wouldn't have a universe. Because trust me, if these people if they could already destroy Vodou, they can't. They tried, but they can't. I'm speaking. I'm here speaking. That's proof that they can't. And I will continue to speak. As much as they are censoring people, I will speak. Because for me not to speak would mean that the atrocities that my ancestors went through, that if I deny them, that means it never happened. It means I can let the enemy tell their stories. And the enemy can put a veneer on their stories and said, oh, it wasn't so bad. Yes, we burned a few of them, but it wasn't that bad. Or it can say things like, oh, well, they wanted to be Christians anyway. Or it can say things like, well, Africa, they sold them. They sold their own people. Or it can say, oh, well, Africa was a tribal place. You know, it wasn't really a system of governments. They were tribal. No, they weren't tribal. They may have became later on after foreign invasion. But they had the most sophisticated systems in the universe of everything. System of government, system of agriculture, system, everything of societies. They built that. But now when the enemy talks about them, you hardly recognize if these people really did exist. Plus, finally, when they finally have proof that, oh, well, these people did a lot of things, then they say, oh, well, it wasn't them. It couldn't have been them. That is why I speak. That is why I have to be who I am, because I represent these people. They are in me. They are my ancestors. You are your ancestors. You are the gods. They live through you. But you have to live to your system. Because theirs is a watered down version, a no frill version. And my ancestors do not want no frill existence. And remember, your enemy will never liberate you. A master never liberated a slave. And even if it did, you just become other version of a slave, but you will always be a slave. Only one who takes its own liberty can call himself or herself a free person. Okay, not one where the master's quote unquote tells you, well, you liberated. Yeah, you liberated from here to here. Like I said, my friend, Alan DeWash, who was a victim of that, he overcame that with voodoo. He was able to do that. They went into his brain, they worked in it, but he had been practicing metaphysics. So he really understood the entire system. This stuff is happening now. Everything is being told to you. You just can't hear it because you've been brainwashed to think another way. When you see something, you don't see it for what it is because they've been brainwashing you for you not to think like that. That's why you don't see everything, but everything is in front of you. They put it in all the symbols. They can't hide it. That's law. That's the principles of the universe. You can't hide stuff. Stuff is here. What they can do is make you think you're not seeing right. That they can do. They can hide it through another veneer by saying that's not what you saw, by getting in here. But everything is here. Everything is open. You can see everything. Because everything is here. Not with the understanding that they gave you. With the understanding behind what the laws gave you, what our gods. You will see everything. Because they cannot hide it. They can code it, but you can decode it. Like I said, my friend who was attacked and who used, because he's a voodoo practitioner, he used voodoo because he was attacked. He knew everything about, metaphysics. So he understood frequencies. He understood, astrology.